Can happy employees really lead to happy shareholders and healthy revenue? Who better to ask than Google's Chief Evangelist Gopi Kallayil? His answer just might surprise you. He joins us today on the You've Been Served podcast. Welcome, Gopi, to You've Been Served.
Thank you, Kiza. Pleasure to be on your show.
Great. You have amazing insight on how we can use innovation to solve social challenges, and we'll get to that. But first, I want to chat about your concept of expecting miracles, and I think you contextualize that wonderfully. You have a great story about how technology brought Bishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama together. So tell us a bit about that and the role that intention played in that.
Well, several years ago, I was working on a product at Google. One of its capabilities was online video streaming with multiple people participating, called Google Hangouts. And as part of the marketing plan for that, I just put an intention out there saying among the many ways by which we could demonstrate what this particular product would do was to bring together the Dalai Lama.
Gopi, I'm going to pause you for 1 second. For some reason, I don't know if you had on a headset or if it's off, but you're a little bit just a bit muffled now. I don't know if something happened.
Hold on a second. No, I'm not having a headset. If you want me to switch, I can switch to that.
Oh, that might be good. That might work. I don't know if that, yeah. Thanks.
What I'll do is just to keep it going rather than leave I set myself up in a conference room.
Okay.
And I'm speaking directly into the computer microphone. Is this helping?
This is perfect. Yeah, this is great now.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Is it sound quality? I'll lean closer to the microphone.
Okay, you're leaning in. That's perfect. That's great. So you can just pick up. So you can just pick up with the bringing the two icons together.
Yeah. So I set among the many ideas for marketing the product. One idea I had was, what if we brought together Archbishop Desmond Tutu and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, along with two other Nobel laureates, in conversation with four extremists, but now reformed, and have a conversation, a dialogue around peace in the world. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting to write these concepts. And Google's the kind of company where you suggest it to someone and people will laugh at you, and so they'll say, "Yeah, go make it happen." They actually are serious. And at that point, I didn't know how exactly to get the Dalai Lama to use a product we were beta testing. Mm-hmm. And when 7 days later, actually it was even less than that, just 3 or 4 days later, I got a call from someone in South Africa saying he had heard that we were working on this particular product, and if there's any way we could address a problem that was brewing in South Africa. And the problem was that Desmond Tutu was getting ready for his 80th birthday and invited the Dalai Lama to attend, but due to certain geopolitical pressures, he had not been granted a visa and he could not travel. So this person who was calling was asking if we could use technology to solve the problem. That's exactly what we did. We did hangouts on air with the Dalai Lama joining from Dharamsala in India and from his house, and Archbishop Desmond Tutu and the other birthday celebrants in Cape Town in South Africa. And this whole episode was then beamed all around the world using internet via Google Hangouts. And that turned out to be a fantastic way by which you could solve the problem. That was a complete miracle. Like, I couldn't have orchestrated the pieces. Somehow everything fell in place for it to happen. It just 7 days after setting the intention.
Wow, that's amazing. And it's great that you had that intention and it worked out. And you say it's a miracle, but clearly it's something that by design, you created in your mind and made happen based on, some of the technologies that Google has. So that's amazing. And just to expound on that, in The Happy Human, you mentioned Google's Project X, where the focus is generally on improving a social problem. And one of my favorite examples of that is Larry Page looking to find a solution to out-of-reach housing costs. I'd like to know, in the broader context, how are technology and business poised to drive those types of social improvements and even sustainability improvements today?
So many of our problems in the human condition has been solved by technology over the years, even before digital technology came on to being. So from food production to medical care to transportation, there are different aspects of technology and innovation that human beings have created that has solved the problem, right? If you look at just mass transit itself. So the approach that X takes is their philosophy of let's look at big problems in the human condition that can be solved, that has not been solved yet. And that is the first stage of it. And the second is then imagine very complex and wild solutions. And we say wild because that allows the brain to go off in various directions and come up with solutions that may not exist in the human condition. And the third piece of that the formula is then to come up with some sort of a breakthrough technology that will actually help implement the solution. So let me give a classic example. Every year, somewhere around 1.8 million people die due to auto accidents. So that is about the size of the city of San Francisco plus neighboring Marin County put together every single year. And if you look at the causes for the problem, it is due to human error. People get distracted or may fall asleep or maybe texting and driving. So that is a big problem in the human condition. We are letting the entire population the size of two neighboring cities get wiped out. So the crazy solution the team thought of was, so why don't we take the human out of the equation? That would make cars safer. Except it's a preposterous idea. But then the breakthrough technology is, given what we have, the data we have in Google Maps, turn-by-turn direction, the fact that we have cameras and other sensors that can look 360 degrees around the car and artificial intelligence in real time that can make decisions for the car, we have actually reached a point where there are self-driving cars, fully autonomous vehicles on the road that are carrying human beings that are far safer than what a human-driven car can be. So that's an example of taking a big problem and reduce the number of auto accidents, and it will reduce the number of auto accidents in the future.
Wow, that's great. I know that that's just one example, and you give loads of others. And in the context of your book, The Happy Human, you and I were talking for a few minutes before the podcast, and one of the things we talked about was, in addition to the social impact that we can really drive from, our creativity, how can, and I'll give the credit to you, how can a happy human in an organization result in a happy shareholder? So in other words, how can we create this kind of compassionate community where we are sharing self-compassion, we have self-compassion, we're giving compassion to others, we have happy people in our organization, but also that makes an impact from a revenue generation perspective? How can that happen?
I mean, ultimately, if you look at it, any organization that is successful is as a result of the humans who work there more than any other assets. I mean, the assets by itself, whether it is production capacity or whether it's financial resources, are not going to do anything with themselves unless there are a group of human beings going to work at it. And it is my firm belief that actually, if you have a group of happy humans as your employees or happy employees, that leads to two things. It leads to high-performing teams, which the research clearly shows, and it also leads to more innovative products because we work at our best capacity when we are happy. And this is a most common observation. So if you want better products and services built, if you want better customer service, if you want better collaboration, you better have a group of happy people working in the company. It's as simple as that. And I can point to any number of research sources. But experientially, we all know this to be true, whether in our families or schools or workplaces. And if you have a group of fairly happy people collaborating, they tend to then create better organizations, better products, better services, which actually will lead to more profitable and high-functioning company. But at the core of it, what I also feel like Kisa is one of the core tenets at Google, one of the principles of innovation is have a mission that matters. You are at your highest state of functioning as an organization when you have a central purpose that is deeply meaningful to the people who work there. And that actually leads to their overall satisfaction because that makes everyone feel like my life matters. The work that I do matters. And I identify with the central mission of this company or organization. And together with all the other people working towards it, I am making my contribution. And that leads to a sense of challenge and fulfillment that is pretty remarkable. So let me give you an example of this. When you're using again Google as an example, since you talked about it, the company was founded with the mission statement, organize, with just 10 words in it: organize all the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful in words. And that original mission statement gave everybody working here that sense of purpose that the work I do or the work we do actually serves and is beneficial to hundreds of millions, if not billions of people around the planet. And if you look at the core of what the original company mission was and the products that they built, whether it's search or maps or YouTube, etc., it democratized information for all of the world's population that had access to some sort of a digital device and digital technology. What I mean by that is all of a sudden, a young person in a village, in a rural area in Nepal, has access to the same amount of information as somebody who goes to NYU, where you studied, Kisa. They can access the same TED Talks, even though they can't afford to go attend TED. They can attend the TED, watch the TED Talks on video, and it's auto translated into some 60 plus languages. Or they can go look at underwater sea life off the island of Galapagos using a National Geographic video, even though in Nepal they are in a landlocked country and they have never seen the ocean. The parents or teachers have never seen the ocean. That sort of a capability is incredibly powerful and empowering to human beings. And what we are essentially doing is, in an era where information is like oxygen, we are leveling the playing field for information for humanity. That sense of mission fires up people and they want to do everything possible. And that leads to very successful products, as we've seen in this case, and eventually to profitable companies. Uh, to use another example, Zappos is a company that was principally organized around happiness. And Tony Hsieh, the founder, and has actually written a book called on Happiness, where he asked the question, how can I build an organization whose core principle is happiness inside the company, and through that creating extreme amount of happiness for his customers. And that's why they had principles like, if I'm not mistaken, if you are in the customer service center, you're not measured by how quickly you finish up a call and go on to the next customer, but talking as long as the customer wants to talk, so that you have deeply satisfied customers and happy customers.
Mm. That's great. Do you think, in terms of the piece that you mentioned, what I do matters, the work that I do matters? Do you think there is an industry that's maybe mastered that, or a region or country, perhaps? I mean, you mentioned Google and Zappos. Do you think technology is really ahead of the curve when it comes to that, or do you think that we're all in different industries, we're all working at it at about the same pace?
Well, I would say definitely in the technology industry, it's easy to draw the arc of that thread where people, feel that they're doing important work and it has a huge impact, and therefore they're driven by it. But I would say it actually applies to uh, every single human being for the most part for the work they do. And my favorite example is something like even farming. Okay? So think of a farmer who grows broccoli or cabbage, and in the order of things, in the way the world works now, compared to a job on Wall Street or something, it may be viewed very differently by some people. But I always say that even the most successful and wealthiest person in the financial services industry still needs that broccoli or the cabbage to sustain himself. And therefore, even that job is meaningful. In fact, at some levels, you could say the person who works in an agricultural farm is doing one of the most fundamental work, which is he's part of that food chain, pun unintended, is part of the food, he or she is part of the food chain that leads to healthy nutrition and healthy human beings. And in that sense, the broccoli farmer is contributing to uh, the overall cost of healthcare as the most advanced heart surgeon. So everybody has got the role. It's a question of reframing and giving meaning to what it is that you do.
Mhm. Wow, that's lovely, and a shout out to our agricultural community, our farmers. Definitely, we need you. We love you. So thanks for that. Shout out to them as well. I'd like to move into our lightning round now. So you'll have 1 minute or thereabouts to answer 5 rapid-fire questions. Are you ready, Gopi?
Well, that's actually terrifying me. You're going to make me an unhappy human at the end of it.
Question 1 will make you happy because question 1 is, what makes your heart sing?
Well, what makes my heart sing is doing the things that I love the most. And there are 3 or 4 things that puts me in that state. One is definitely singing in a particular genre. Kirtan, I always find that fills me with love. I find doing, we're doing a certain kind of work actually, and clearing things out and making progress is deeply satisfying, hitting my tasks, goals, etc. I find public speaking, being in front of an audience and energizing them, moving them, selling them on a compelling idea that makes my heart sing. So does physical activity of a certain kind, yoga, biking, swimming, anything that's body movement of certain types that appeal to me or makes my heart sing. And finally, I would say meditation, dropping into that quiet space, especially if I'm in a beautiful nature-based setting, and just shutting out all the noise and distractions from outside and dropping into something that is deep and core. To me, that makes my heart sing, counterintuitive at these things. And finally, it's being with people who I care deeply about, friends. I'm very social, and just spending uh, time in an unstructured way with them I find that extremely beautiful, and it makes my heart sing.
Fabulous. You've traveled extensively. I mean, Iceland, Tanzania, you climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, Kenya, throughout India, well beyond your homeland. Is there any place you have not visited that you urgently want to visit?
Well, coming up on my list, I would say I would put for this year, I'm targeting the following places if I can get to it: Bhutan, Tibet, and Morocco.
Yes, lovely. In one part of the book, you touch on something very personal. You were unemployed. You were grappling with whether to take unemployment benefits because of the stigma that goes along with it. What was the one thing that helped you develop that inner drive and that inner power to get up, get out, and at that point in your life, start traveling, but really start living? What was the one key thing that took you from that point of despair to the point in which you really lived your dream?
Yeah, so along with I had lost my job, I didn't have a place to live. I took a financial hit. My personal life was in a bit of turmoil. It's like every aspect of my life was crumbling. Each day brought in more bad news. And all of a sudden, and even a couple of weeks before that, everything seemed to be going well. And it was a humbling reminder, Kisa, that nothing in life is impermanent, is permanent. Everything is impermanent, and things can change in a hurry, and not to be attached to the way things are, and not be frightened by the great unknown. And the one thing that really made me go towards it is like to be the bison. And in my first book, I talk about it, where the American bison, when a storm is approaching, actually turns towards the storm and walks into it. So I use that metaphor a lot in life when these kind of sort of circumstances hit. And the reason the American bison does that is it knows that if it walks into the storm, it'll be out of the storm faster. So while all the other animals try to flee the storm, it walks right into it. So or the other metaphor I also use is the one of a surfer. Well, the waves in the ocean during a storm gets really high, big, and dangerous. Most people will exit the water. Surfers actually go seeking those kind of big waves and surf them. This is the thrill they seek. This is the adventure. This is the juiciness of their life. So I started treating problems like this as the big wave coming, and I'm the surfer, and I'm going to walk towards it like the bison, arms swinging, chest open, head held high, with a lot of curiosity, no fear, to see what is going to emerge. How will I respond? And just feel the thrill of the wave. So that reframing is the one that helped me the most. And just the serenity of telling myself, this may not be the life I chose, but this is the life I've been given, and I'm choosing to live it with grace and dignity, with grace and dignity.
What would you say is the top tip, the key to being a good chief evangelist? If you are an entrepreneur, if you're an entrepreneur working with another company, what is the one key to being the best chief evangelist
Well,
ever?
you got to believe in a certain point of view. You've got to have a stand and be passionate about it and be able to speak about it and argue for your position with compelling stories and data.
Okay. And what do businesses need to know about the reason, the rationale that they should adopt happiness, compassion urgently? What is the most important thing that business leaders need to know about the reason to adopt, compassion and happy humans, adopting that whole practice right now as opposed to waiting for years down the road?
Well, I would say two reasons. First is that, as we discussed earlier in the podcast, keys up, happy companies are built on top of happy employees, and happy employees are composed of each individual happy human who works there, plain and simple. And there's enough evidence that companies run well, teams work better, you build better products, and you are financially more successful. But a secondary one, and not all CEOs will embrace, but mostly all entrepreneurs that I've met, business leaders, have a sense of mission, a sense of purpose, that they're not just here building an organization and maximizing profits, even though that might be the stated goal. They also want to have an impact, leave a legacy in their communities where they work, and make a difference in the world, and see that their companies are solving big problems and are agents of change. And if that is the case, it again, all of them starts with the most important resource you have, which is your base of employees, your team.
Mm.
If they are happy, if they are high functioning, if they feel psychologically safe, you have a higher chance of success. You leave behind, at the bare minimum, you leave behind a good base of your employees who are happy and fulfilled.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Gopi. Where can we find you in the social landscape to continue to stay looped in on the great things you're working on? If we want to track you down, know where you're speaking in the future, how can we find that out?
Well, very simply, there is this incredible service I know of called Google, where you search for my name, Gopi Kallayil, Gopikallayil, and that should link you to my site and and all my social media links, etc. Or just type my URL, www.kallayil.com, KALLAYIL.com, and I'm on all the main social media properties where I regularly update places where I'm speaking or excerpts from my books, etc.
Great. Well, this has been fantastic, Gopi. Thank you so much for joining. You've been served.
Thank you, Kiza, and I'm delighted to meet another happy human.